our 2 weeks will look like. Friday, we're taking the test over these chapters. I am not giving you anything else, so there's not a one-pager, there's not a cheat sheet. The stuff that I passed out is the only thing that you are required to turn in on Friday, plus brown boxes, and that's only have to do. You do not, brown boxes and test prep. So brown boxes, test prep, reading questions, and then, was it 2 worksheets or 1? 2, those 2 worksheets. That's for Friday. Then the next week, that'll be our last test. No, and then that will be our last like regular class stuff. The 2 weeks leading up to the exam. Next week, we'll go over very quickly. Day 1, we'll do World War II, mostly because there's not any questions about war or all that stuff, so we'll do that. And this will be where my APUSH kids, when I said that, they're like, yeah, but I'm hoping you're a little more mature. This will be where we'll look more like a regular class. You'll have an assignment, do the next day. It won't be a huge thing. It'll be like a simple regular worksheet. Just especially with World War II, you're not going to be asked many things. It'll look more like one of those one-page worksheets that we have. Then Tuesday, Wednesday, we'll go over Cold War and then have one assignment about the Cold War. That'll be Tuesday, Wednesday. Thursday and Friday, we'll look at the 60s and 70s in Europe, and then that will take us to the end. And then that week of exams, we will do some studying in class. Again, you need to be studying on your own at home, looking through, putting all those cheat sheets together, looking at all the one-pagers that you've made for those of you that are visual. I think, and I may have said this to you guys yesterday, but I definitely know I said it to my APUSH kids. I did just say it to my APUSH kids because they were talking about how far behind other classes were. One of the things that I get as a teacher that helps me as an AP teacher, I get a breakdown of scores, nobody's name. This is the sad thing about AP scores. When you get your score, you'll just get a number. You'll never get anything else. You'll get a number, hope everyone's is above a 3, but you don't get anything else. You don't get, you did great on this, you did bad on this. You don't get anything except a number. I get a comparison of my class, so all 8 of you, as compared to a global mean and a state. So I get to compare you 8 against the state of Indiana, all students that took the AP Euro exam, and then I get to compare you globally. And probably within the first 2 years of me teaching, because the first 2 years are really hard because you're still trying to figure out what you're doing. Although I will say my first year of teaching Euro and my first year of teaching APUSH, I had people pass. But what my students do very well is write. Your average, especially for the state of Indiana, is well above the average for the state of Indiana. So you guys do better on SAQs, you do better on DBQs, you do better on LAQs than the students taking the test in the state of Indiana by a lot. Globally, better than the global average by a little bit. Where do we fall down? It's the part that I can't make you do, and that would be called studying. Where we all fall down is on the multiple choice. And that is because all I can do is teach you the strategies of how to take the test. I can provide you with ample opportunities to see the way the questions are formatted, but I can't make you study. And that is evident, and it is apparent, and it makes me feel awesome as a teacher, and it makes me feel sad for you. Not you, I don't mean you 8, but it makes me feel sad because the stuff that I know and I can help you with, you guys do awesome. But the stuff that's left for you to do on your own, not so awesome. So since there's only 8 of you, it makes it really easy for me to see where all that comes in. So please study. It is a necessary part of this. The questions, again, are more rounded type questions, are not as vague, or not as, not as specific as the questions that we have in here. So you should even find them a little bit easier because they are grouped, as one topic about the Reformation instead of a test of 54 where it gets really specific and really difficult. So I'm hoping that works. All right. So the bottom of page 10 into page 11, we have Wilson's 14 points. And those 14 points, again, are things that you need to really make sure that you have a good handle on. Some of the ones that are going to be really important as we end World War I will be 2E, the promise of independence. This is our nationalistic goal of all of those people living under an empire, that they're going to get their own country. So Poland's going to get their country back, because right now there's really not a Poland. The Czechs will have their own country and not be part of the Austrian-Hungary Empire. And that's what a lot of these people believe. The other part, let's make sure that we write somewhere either on the bottom of page 10 or the top of page 11 that Wilson promises peace without victory. That's another key component. Wilson acknowledges that we don't have to have victory to have peace. And Germans are really going to pick that up. Peace without victory. It means there doesn't need to be someone that annihilates everybody else. We can come to some kind of agreement, sitting at a table with our big boy pants on, and instead of annihilating another country, let's come up with some peace terms. When Germany agrees to an armistice, that's what they feel like they're agreeing to. Peace without victory. That is not going to be the way that it ends. All right, so, and then the last one on page 11 is the international organization that is the League of Nations, that eventually, by the time we get to World War II, will already be decided that this is something that we need to be a part of, and it will be called the United Nations. So how does the war end? The war ends in the spring of 1918 when the United States brings in their fresh new troops. And again, this is the part that makes some chest-beating Americans mad. The reason that the war ends at that point is not necessarily American troops. It's just fresh troops. Those troops could have been from anywhere. It just so happens to be that they're from the United States. And those fresh troops, those troops that have not been battled down by months and months and months on the front, or sent back home and to come back again, that's what makes the difference. The Germans are going to transfer their divisions from the east to the Western Front, and they are going to mount a massive offense. The Germans now have all of their troops in one spot, and this could have been disastrous without those fresh American troops. The U.S. is going to enter the war just in time to assist Britain and France. Please look at the words, and please make sure you understand how Britain and France feel about the entrance of the United States into World War I. Assist, 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 assist. Not winning, assisting, because Britain and France had been there slinging it out. And this is an assist, right? It's not scoring the basket. It's not scoring the goal. It's getting the assist. That's the way this is viewed historically by the rest of the world. Central powers are going to seek peace based on the 14 points, believing they would get fair treatment. Again, that's crucial. They believe Wilson. When Wilson enters and the United States enters into the war, that's what they believe, that Germany and Austria-Hungary were racked with revolution. Their countries internally are falling apart. The people in Germany are saying, we're starving to death. It's time to end this. Nothing is happening. We're at a stalemate. There's no movement. Why are we doing this? We can't keep sending all of our sons and fathers to go fight this war. And so Germany is going to surrender on the 3rd. Austria is going to surrender on November 3rd, and Germany will surrender on November 11th. And they surrender at a designated time, the 11th minute of the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. Sadly, Great Britain is going to mount an offensive at 10:30. From 10:30 to 11, there are going to be British troops killed when the war is getting ready to end in 11 minutes. At 10:30 in 37 minutes. It's the saddest part of World War I to me. That last day that someone's going to get a note, someone's going to get a telegram that their son died 15 minutes before the war was over. I don't understand that, but it's bad. Wilhelm II is forced to abdicate, and he will flee to Holland, where he will live for the rest of his days till he dies. So everyone has put a hold on war. And then we head to the Paris Peace Conference of 1919. It is going to last over a year, trying to figure out how to create this peaceful settlement that everyone can agree on. We call it the Big Four, and you need to know these people. David Lloyd George represents Britain. Clemenceau represents France. Wilson represents the United States. And Orlando represents Italy. He gets left out of everything. How does that happen? The Big Three say, hey, we're going to meet after breakfast at 10 o'clock. Orlando, that's when you should show up. Orlando shows up at 10 o'clock and finds that George, Clemenceau, and Wilson met for breakfast and have discussed everything for the day, and they just hand him, here's what we did. He gets left out of everything. It's really the Big Three. Italy gets no say in much of anything. The Central Powers are excluded from negotiations. Germany is not welcome to the table. Austria-Hungary, not welcome to the table. Italy is leaving the conference mad. That's significant because Italy is going to go home mad, and in about 5 years, they are going to be a fascist nation. This is what we find out after the Treaty of Versailles, is that you cannot leave defeated countries in places where they are destroyed without some kind of safety net, because when that happens, the worst part of society will take over. So what we learned from the Treaty of Versailles, that Italy leaves mad because of the way they're treated, and in 5 short years, they're going to be a fascist country under Mussolini. Germany's going to get blamed for everything, and in 8 short years, 1932, they're going to be a Nazi country under Adolf Hitler. It is not like, wow, how did that happen? We know exactly how that happened. And it's the reason why after World War II, we drastically changed the way that we deal with defeated nations. Maddie, your question.
Why did they exclude Italy from everything?
Why did they exclude Italy? Because truly Italy brought nothing to the table war-wise, right? They just were on the coattails. And those three felt like diplomatically, Italy was not worthy. They are still a developing nation. They don't have a strong economy. It's a country that internally is having problems with themselves. And those 3 countries felt that they were beneath them. And that's exactly what Italy felt. There was no like, wow, why are they treating me this way? They knew exactly. That's why they leave. And that's why they develop into a fascist nation. It's not a mistake. It's not like anything that and something that easily could have been prevented. So
It feels like PPQ contextualization.
Yeah, I know. It's great contextualization. All right, so at the bottom of page 11, we get the Versailles Treaty. So the Versailles Treaty will be signed in the Hall of Mirrors in Versailles. It should not be lost on you when we have our quick discussion Monday about World War II, that where Hitler does all of his business in taking over Paris, guess where he does it? Hall of Mirror, Versailles. Guess what he blows up first? The train where the Treaty of Versailles is signed by the Germans. Blows that thing to smithereens. Blows it up like boom. So what does the Treaty of Versailles do? Again, it's signed in 1919. It takes a whole year. In the middle of this, and again, this isn't U.S. history, but I do think it's important for you to know. In the middle of all of this, President Wilson has a severe, debilitating stroke. He's going to tell the American public that it's the flu, and in many places you'll still hear or be told that it was a flu. It was not the flu. He had stroke. A flu doesn't keep you in the bed for 4 months. A stroke does. So what happens when he's incapacitated is both his wife and the Secretary of State take over. His wife is protecting him from the public and from journalistic reports that he's incapacitated. And the Secretary of State is doing all of the negotiating. So, Treaty of Versailles does a couple things. First is mandates, created by former colonies and territories. Again, almost all of the Middle East is a mandate, meaning it is cared for by another country. Why? Because we have found oil in the Middle East. And nobody wants to let those countries govern themselves because of that precious commodity of oil. So Great Britain has a mandate, France has a mandate. The most important one at the bottom of page 11 is Article 231. You need a giant box around this. This needs to be committed to memory, Article 231. This will be one of the few questions, if you're asked anything about this, that will be a memory type question. What is Article 231? Article 231 is called the blame clause. Placed sole blame for the war on Germany, not Austria. Austria is not mentioned at all. Right? We know Austria fired the first shot. We know Austria declared war first. Germany is getting blamed for everything. Germany is now going to be severely punished. Who wants Germany severely punished? What country? What? France. France wants Germany severely punished. Great Britain says, whoo, that's probably not a good idea, Georges. But whatever, Wilson is saying, and the Secretary of State saying, this is a bad, bad idea. Georges and David say, guess what, America? You're new to this game. We don't really care what you think. We're punishing Germany once and for all. Now let's take a little contextualization. Is France just punishing Germany for World War I? What was that other little war that Germany beat?
30 Years' War.
Oh, that's too far back.
Oh.
Franco-Prussian.
Oh, that one.
Let's just go 15 years. France is also getting back at losing the Franco-Prussian War. And I'm not saying that we don't go all the way back to the 30 Years' War because this stuff runs deep. But France is getting back at Germany, most importantly, for World War I, Franco-Prussian War, any other embarrassing thing that they could potentially think of.
Okay, so why does France get to call the shots?
Exactly. Why does France get to call? Is because, number one, they're in France, and number two, Georges Clemenceau. He is a superior diplomat. He out-diplomats everybody else. That's a very good question. Why is France calling the shots? Because they can. Because they're France. Because Great Britain really doesn't care, because Great Britain is already dealing with issues back home. Great Britain is beginning to deal with labor issues and strikes. They're already facing and turning back home. And France is reasserting their position of power and diplomacy in Europe. Because who took it from them? Germany and Bismarck. We're getting that back. Wilson, incapacitated. He's not here. Secretary of State doesn't quite hold the same clout, right, as the president negotiating. So Germany is forced to pay a huge reparation to Great Britain and France, enormous amounts of money. This is, bless you, this is when the Great Depression begins. I know most of us think of the Great Depression as something that happens in the United States, but it's a global depression. And for Europe, it's going to begin in 1920 when Germany has to pay back all this money. Germany's army and navy reduced. There are, specific numbers of troops that they're allowed to have. The Rhineland is demilitarized and the Saar coal mines are taken over by France. Germany loses all of its colonies, all of them. And Germany says, as they roll up into Versailles to sign this treaty, Germany says, we're not signing that. Like, that is not anything that we agreed to. France and Great Britain then say, well, don't sign it. That's fine. But our troops will be mobilized within 24 hours and we will march to Berlin. So Great Britain and France hold that over them because they still have their armies parked. They haven't sent men home yet. Germany is forced to sign. What this becomes for Adolf Hitler and his rise with the Treaty of Versailles is the stab in the back. We got stabbed in the back. We didn't start this war. We didn't do this. But France stabbed us in the back. And most importantly for Adolf Hitler and this nationalist, Germans let it happen. So for Hitler, he blames as much that Weimar government that let that happen. And so that's where he builds up that nationalistic steam that will have Germany by 1932 as a Nazi nation. On the top of page 12, the League of Nations, Germany, Russia, you do not get to belong. And we'll find out why Russia doesn't get to belong with that next page called the Russian Revolution. Usually we are behind because usually we are finished with the Russian Revolution by the time you guys do Animal Farm, which would make Animal Farm make so much more sense to you if you understood the Russian Revolution. Today you're going to get it and you're going to understand all of that stuff so much better. How many chapters have you read of Animal Farm? You're halfway through it? Okay, so now it's going to make so much more sense to you. No, it will. What? Well, you'll like it even better when you understand the Russian Revolution. League of Nations born as a shadow. The United States does not enter into the League of Nations. Why? Because the United States is being an isolationist nation. We are isolating ourselves and we're doing this America First thing. So on page 12, this is what you would be asked about World War I. If you're asked anything about it as far as a test question or a short answer question, a DBQ, or a long essay. We have not had a DBQ on World War I ever. And I keep hoping every year that it's World War I. Please be World War I. Please be World War I. Please be World War I. And it's not. So I'm still hoping. Please be World War I. I think they never do it because this is a fresh topic in your brain. And so they always go back to peasant revolts or something from first semester that makes you challenge your memory of your brain. Yes, they do.
I feel like I remember all of that better.
Oh, really?
The Franco
You know why? You know why? You know why? You know why? Because you have better recall of your long-term memory than you do your short-term memory.
Okay,
that is the way memory works. That is why you can't remember where your keys are, but you can remember your phone number from third grade.
Yeah.
Right? And that is why when people develop dementia and Alzheimer's, they can't remember words, but they can remember what happened to them when they were 5. And that is the key, people, to good study techniques and habits, is moving this Franco-Prussian War from short-term to long-term. You got to think of your brain like a filing cabinet, right? You've got to get those files in the front of your brain that sit right here to the back of your brain so that you can recall them. That is a perfect response to how memory and recall work, that you can remember events from the 30 Years' War because you filed it. And it's not because it's like, oh, I like that better, but it's because we've done so much stuff with it. It's moved to your long-term memory. This you haven't done enough. You haven't done all your homework yet to catch you up, and it's still sitting in the front part of your brain. And so you need to move it to the back part. That's not just true with this, it's true with anything that you do, any studying, anything that you do. And that's why, like with math, one of the key things about getting math is repetition. Like in geometry, when we did proofs, we must have done 100 proofs. That's the only way to move them to the back part of your brain. Yeah. All right, so let's look at this because this is really important. The impact of World War I on society. The biggest impact of World War I on society is it crushes the class system. Does anyone watch Downton Abbey, or have they ever watched Downton Abbey? Okay, so remember what happens after World War I. When they come back and the youngest daughter starts running around with the communist dude, right? All of those class norms, those lanes that you're supposed to stay in, have been crushed by World War I. Why? Because World War I shatters the world that we know. That this industrial revolution that we use to build this mighty industrial country, toasters and airplanes and telephones and new ways to cure diseases, has just been used to shatter humanity. We have used industry to create a machine gun. And what's the purpose of a machine gun? To kill a whole lot of people. So we have shattered those social norms. Again, we also have casualties, right? Everybody experienced loss. There is nothing that reduces class lines than casualties and death, right? It doesn't just stay in the lane of poor people, right? Because we could say, oh, we don't got to worry about cholera because only those poor people get cholera. Everybody has been hit by this devastation. 10 million soldiers, 10 million civilians. We also have really our first pandemic of the Spanish influenza, where 6 million people are going to die from the Spanish flu. Birth rate is going to fall tremendously. Why? Because there's no men. The young men are all gone. And number two, war promoted greater social equality, and that's essential. That's the biggest thing that's going to change. And again, if you are looking for something to pass your time, if you have Downton Abbey CDs or somewhere, this is a great one to watch because it'll make so much more sense to you. All this communism thing, all the people staying in their places, how the staff start to change and get a little uppity because like this is not the way things are going to be. Blurring of class lines, lessening the gap between the rich and the poor. The Russian Revolution, which we'll get tomorrow. Where does nobility fit in all of this, right? Where does this go? Are we still doing this divine right thing? Women are going to get the right to vote in Britain. The nobility in Germany, Austria, and Russia, gone. They are gone. They cease to exist. Women take over jobs that men were fighting, parentheses, paid lower wages, which is why they were hired. Dissident increase. Dissident means to go against. Dissident means that you don't like what's happening and you are protesting. The Tsar is going to be overthrown by the provisional government. That's our Russian Revolution, and the Tsar and his family will be killed. Ireland is going to stage their own insurrection called the Easter Rebellion in 1916 in the middle of the war, which is why, again, Kaylee, when you ask why does France get to pick everything, because stuff in Great Britain is drastically causing David Lloyd George to say, we just need to get this thing signed so we can get home. I've got rebellions. I've got labor revolts. I've got strikes. I've got all this stuff happening. I just need to get back home and fix my country.
Why is this stuff happening in Great Britain?
Why is it happening in Great Britain?
Like, what was
It's happening in Great Britain for two reasons. The Easter Rebellion is about home rule, that Ireland says we do not want to be part of the UK anymore. So that is a separate thing. But the unions are happening as a continuation of the people in Great Britain being offered a sense of representation. So remember, in Europe, the country that offers the most representation or the most rights to vote is Great Britain. They only have 10%, and now they want more. And so that's what's happening. In Germany, militant socialists and anti-war activists like Rosa Luxemburg and Clara Zetkin are imprisoned for trying to convince fellow socialists not to support the war effort. Rosa's going to be executed and assassinated by Nazis. Large crowds of women in France and Austria are protesting working conditions. And government censorship existed everywhere. Everywhere. So we are in a bad spot. A bad, bad spot. When we get to our time between the war, we have two sets of notes. A giant, giant set of notes about totalitarianism and a little teeny tiny set of notes about democracies, because that's what's getting ready to happen. A totalitarian government means they totally control everything. That's an easy way to remember it. A totalitarian government totally controls everything. They control the government, they control the press, they control churches, they control the labor, they control the economy. They totally control everything. So that's when people throw around that word like a totalitarian, like in this time period, it's like people you don't know. Most of you do live under a totalitarian government. That would be your parents. They totally control everything. Maybe they let you pick out your clothes, but for the most part, if you want to know what a totalitarian government is like, it's your parents, especially when you're a little kid, right? They totally control. What?
This shirt was a fight.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. Wow.
Because it's
astrology.
Astrology. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's the devil's word. We're speaking with the devil's tongue. It is. My granny would agree, 1,000%.
I'm sure my mom would love your
Oh, yes. My granny's favorite was, "You're speaking with the forked tongue of the devil. I rebuke you. I rebuke you." I know, Granny, I love you too. I never got sideways with my granny because I never did anything. I love my granny.
See, my mom.
I never got sideways with her because she could. 2 times I did. One, when I smashed down her gladiolas. Do you guys know what gladiolas are? Gladiolas are big, tall flowers. And when you're like 6 and you could put your foot at the base of them and they like, and we didn't do all of them. We did like every other one. And Granny was very, very angry. And then the one time we brought Old Maid cards, that was my papa. My papa got really mad. He threw them out in the yard and then burned them. These gambling devil den cards. I'm like, they're Old Maid. Like, couldn't play cards. Like, none of that. No cards, no.
My mom is like more.
Bless you.